Hi there, you're listening to the Estranged Heart podcast, and I'm your host, Kreed Revere. Welcome back to our returning listeners, and if this is your first time here, thank you for selecting this podcast to listen to. As we begin today's episode, I invite you to grab a cup of coffee or tea, settle in, and listen with an open heart. But first, the regular disclaimer. I am not a licensed therapist or counselor. Nothing within this podcast should be considered or taken as therapy. If you are in need of therapeutic support such as counseling, please seek out a therapist near you. Hi there. Welcome back to another episode of The Estranged Heart. Before we get started with today's episode, a couple of announcements and reminders. Reminder, the current cohort of Zoom support groups are currently in progress. They will end second week of November, I believe. And if you are looking to join the next group, please let me know. I am looking forward to supporting you through the holidays. And if you're interested in being a part of these Zoom support groups, they do run for 8 weeks. And the next group will begin mid-November, so it will be enough time to get us through all of the holidays and into the beginning of 2025. Um, if you're interested in that, please let me know. Send an email, and I'm happy to get you on the list to be notified by email when we're ready to begin registration. There is a fee for these groups. If you are interested in a group for no cost, I do offer a Facebook online support group, and you can simply search Estranged Mothers Support Group on Facebook, and it should be one of the first one that pops up. We would love to have you join that group as well. And I've mentioned a couple of different times about voice messages being available now. Um, and if you're interested in leaving a voicemail for me, a voice message for me, you may do that via my website, and I'll include the link in the show notes of today's episode. However, some folks have asked, well, what do I do with that? How do I use that? So maybe you have a question you would like me to answer on an episode or create an episode around a question that you have. You may leave a voice message for me for that. Perhaps you have a heartfelt message to, I don't know, maybe your estranged adult child or your estranged parent, and you really want them to hear you from your heart and what you were wanting them to know. And as a caveat, most people understand those messages will not be aired if they give identifying information or they are less than kind and compassionate and curious. Okay. And also, we're coming up on the holidays. Another thing that might be a really good way of helping to give back a little bit is by leaving a voice message that I could air on the show, indicating some ways that have helped you to get through and navigate the holiday season without your adult child in your life. So if you'd like to leave a message for the estranged parents or the estranged adult children, you may do so. That being said, not all messages will be aired, so I want to just lay that out there, and I will preview those first. Those messages do not go directly to um, and dump into the episode itself. I do screen those and will select the ones to air on the show. And finally, I want to announce a Q&A hour for estranged and reconciled parents of LGBTQIA plus adult children. So if you are a parent and your child or children identify as members of the LGBTQIA plus community, and you have questions, and you don't know where to turn, you don't know who to ask, where to go, that type of thing, please consider joining me on Monday, November the 4th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Again, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. This will be via Zoom, and there will be no charge for this hour. It's a time for me to answer your questions. It's a time for you to ask all of those questions that have been on your mind and you just didn't know where to go. So things such as, um, what do these folks go through when they come out? What's that process? What causes them to cut off their entire families? Just kind of as a side note, there was an article in Psychology Today that estimated that 50% of LGBTQIA plus folks estrange their families. So if that just as a side note, if you want to know um, what are maybe some of the broader impacts of families on families regarding this, what do they need to heal and be able to reconnect from their with their families? If you've wondered some of those questions and just didn't know who to ask. Maybe you don't have anyone in your immediate circle that is um, a member of this community or would have any of these answers. I'm here to help with that. Most everyone knows, and I believe I've made it mentioned on the podcast. I am a member of this community myself, and it did play into one of the three estrangements that I've had with my parents. So, if you are interested in learning more, and you are an estranged or reconciled parent of an LGBTQIA plus adult child, please consider joining us. And you can email me, and I'm happy to send you the Zoom link for that day. Again, there is no charge for this. So, with that being said, um, let's get on with today's episode. So, today's episode is titled Pushing and Prodding is Not Helping You. And, when you take, when a relationship is broken, especially one that runs as deep as a parent and child bond, the desire to fix it and fix it right now can be very overwhelming. I see this all the time with my coaching clients, with folks in my support group, and it's something I experienced in my estrangement experience. I wanted to fix it yesterday. Get on with the show. I'm very much an Aries. Let's go, go, go. Fix, fix, fix. Do, do, do kind of thing. Unless I am overwhelmed, overextended, in trauma, which leads me to then be in a place of indecision and inability to take action. Okay. And for me, and I think for a lot of people, that's a process of healing. I know for estranged adult children and for estranged parents, so this can kind of go the other way for estranged parents, where their adult child is pushing and prodding for therapy, and the parent doesn't know anything about therapy, doesn't want to do it, doesn't for what have there's a whole host of reasons, but parents can feel like they're being pushed and prodded into a direction they don't want to go into, and so what happens when we feel pushed and prodded to do something we're not ready for, that we don't want to do? And I really want you to think about this. Parents, I want you to think about this. When your child comes to you and starts giving you the list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 things you need to do in order to reconcile, and you're overwhelmed and you're like, I cannot do these things. I don't even understand what half of them are. I don't know what to do. I'm scared to death. I don't know where I'm at. I don't know how I ended up here. And yet the adult child keeps coming at you and coming at you and coming at you. What do you want to do? I would imagine, I know I went through this. My coaching clients go through this. You want to retreat. You want to pull back. It does nothing to help want to bring you closer to this other person. As a matter of fact, it does quite the opposite, right? So when we are doing that to our children, they're wanting to retreat. When we're constantly calling and emailing and sending text messages, what's wrong? Why? What have I done? I don't understand. Please help me. Those types of things. While those are very valid things for you to be experiencing, taking action on them is a different story. And that pushing is actually pushing your adult child further away instead of wanting them to come closer. Okay. So, um, it's important to understand that estrangement is a break in trust. And if we are to rebuild trust, we must have patience. Okay. When I say it's a break in trust, I'm talking about emotional trust, right? There is a desire or an emotional trust has been broken. And so in order to bring that back online, it requires patience and compassion and more patience and more compassion and more patience. You get the picture, right? So I pushing pushing only adds pressure, right? You might feel like you're getting somewhere by taking some sort of action, but in reality, you're doing more harm than good in most cases. Every case that I've known. Um, it's completely natural to want to reconcile and do it yesterday. But the push for reconciliation is driven by a mix of things for you: desperation, anxiety, fear, guilt. Desperation is probably the most common. Mothers want so badly to understand why their adult child is estranged, and then they want to jump into fixing it. Just tell me what I need to do, and I'll fix it right now. Except the exception is a lot of them don't want to go to therapy, right? Or any sort of coaching because that's scary. That's the unknown, and it's going to bring up a bunch of feelings that are very, very uncomfortable for me, and I don't want to go there. So, but they want to fix it. The fear, they also experience fear that this is never going to end, and then that leads to intense anxiety, and because we're feeling out of control and we're spinning out of control, and then we have all the guilt and all the things, right? So if we can just push our kid into reconciling, then I don't have to face all that stuff, and all those feelings, quote unquote, go away. But here's the thing: every human being is on their own healing journey. You and your adult child, you're on your own paths. And rushing that process of healing does nothing to foster trust. It basically erodes it even more. So they don't feel emotionally safe. And in order for reconciliation to happen, they have to have safety and trust to be able to rebuild the relationship. Um, this is one of the biggest lessons that a lot of my clients have to learn. Um, and I always ask them, how would it feel if someone were trying to push you into doing something? And that's when they begin to have the ahas, right? So I describe it in a way that says, it's kind of like a husband and wife when there's been infidelity. And say the husband's had the affair, he ends the affair, they're in couples counseling, and 2 months after ending the affair, he's like, "Oh my God, how much longer are you going to punish me? How much longer is this going to take? I've done all the things you've asked me to do. Why don't you trust me? I don't understand. Like, come on, let's get on with it," right? And the wife is over there going, "Oh my God, you have no idea how hurt I've been and how long it's going to take to rebuild trust so that I can trust you without being overly cautious, monitoring everything that I say, and not in trusting your actions or inactions, right? It's very similar. It's in every relationship. Once the trust has been broken, it takes a significant period of time to rebuild that trust. And this is where sometimes when I have, on occasion, I'll have a mom reach out to me and she's sharing, "Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. We've reconciled. We were estranged for 2 years um and now we're reconciled. It's been 6 weeks and we're talking to each other every day and we're seeing each other on the weekends." And I'm thinking, "Oh my gosh, this trust probably hasn't been rebuilt." And without that trust having been rebuilt, there's a very good likelihood of it ending up in estrangement again. And that breaks my heart. Right. So what can we do to when you get twisted and sideways with wanting to reach out and start pushing? What can you do? Well, my first suggestion to clients is to get yourself busy doing something else. Right. So if you're thinking about reaching out to your adult child, start getting busy doing something else. I generally suggest journaling for a couple of reasons. Number one, it gets you occupied doing something else. Number two, it gets your mind focused on why am I wanting to reach out? What am I feeling? And number three, it begins to um, help you to understand your patterns. And when we can understand our patterns of behavior, then we have an awareness around them and then we can change them into healthy patterns, right? So that's one thing. I also suggest getting into support groups. In support groups, you're around other people, other mothers. You can share. Each of them tend to share what works for them, what doesn't work for them, and you might get ideas there. And then I also suggest individual coaching. With my coaching clients, they have access to me in between sessions, and it's not uncommon for them to reach out via email and say, "Oh my gosh, I'm wanting so badly to reach out to my kid." And we walk through that via email. So get yourself a support system in place, and that will be super helpful. Um, I struggled with this in my own estrangement, and I learned from therapy that my need to push was really about me. My need to feel in control and to soothe my own anxiety. Um, Pushing someone to do something on my timeline was about trying to manage my own discomforts. It wasn't helping my daughters. It was about me trying to ease my pain. And that was a huge aha for me. Absolutely huge. So it's really hard as a parent who's been managing your child all of their life to step back and allow time and space. It's really hard. It's hard to make that recognition. Um, as much as we want to push the process forward, the most compassionate thing we can do is give them the space they need and or have asked for. And during this time, it doesn't mean that you're doing nothing. In fact, it's during that time that I encourage mothers to focus on their own healing, quote unquote, doing the work, right? Is peeling back the layers of your life, reflect on your own emotional wounds, and learn more about yourself. That way, when your child does come back, they come back to a mom who is grown and is ready to meet them with empathy and understanding. And it's so hard to do that when our wounds are unhealed. Okay. You want to be the healthiest version of yourself when your child returns. They need and want to come back to someone who has healed, who knows themselves, and who can offer the emotional safety they've been searching for and wanting. So, as I wrap up today's episode, I want to leave you with this. Healing isn't something you can rush. Your child's journey is their own. Focus on giving them space and use this time to work on your own healing. Trust that when the timing is right, the reconciliation process will unfold naturally. And if you would like coaching support through your estrangement journey or your reconciliation journey, please feel free to reach out. I have space for additional coaching clients in November and December. And you can reach me at theestrangedheart@gmail.com. Until next time. This brings this episode to a close. I hope that this time together was time you feel well spent and that you are able to find some takeaway nuggets to help you on your journey, wherever you may be on your estrangement and reconciliation path. If you feel you've received something helpful or positive from this podcast, please consider following us, sharing this podcast with others, leaving a positive review, perhaps entertaining becoming a guest on our show, or following us on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok under the same name, The Estranged Heart. As a reminder, there is an online support group on Facebook. If you are a estranged mom who identifies as being spiritual and approaches estrangement with a sense of curiosity rather than blame and judgment, and desire to do inner self-work and reflection, please seek us out. We can be found at facebook.com/estranged mothers support group. And lastly, if you are an estranged parent or an estranged adult child and would like to have your story shared on the podcast, anonymously or not, please reach out to me via email at theestrangedheart@gmail.com.